Hi everybody, I just want to show you my studio setup. I'll start from this side of the palette. First of all, I've got this trolley that I bought from IKEA. It's just a grey metal trolley, but I really love it because it's a neutral. Hi everybody, I just want to show you my studio setup. I'll start from this side of the palette. First of all, I've got this trolley that I bought from IKEA. It's just a grey metal trolley, but I really love it because it's a neutral grey. So what I've done is I've got a piece of glass cup to fit the top of this trolley, and this I use as my palette. What's great about using a glass palette is that it can easily be cleaned or scraped off. And just scrape it off. Grab a wet wipe, which I've got underneath here, and wipe it. And I've got a little bin that I've tied to the side here that I throw my rubbish in. I've also got these tiles or towelettes on the side here that I can wipe my paintbrush with. So here in this little box here, I've got all sorts of little tools that I might need. Scissors, a knife, pencils, ruler. Here I keep all my brushes. These brushes I've just cleaned, that's why they're in a separate glass. These little containers are great for going outside and painting and putting them on your palette. If you've got a special medium or anything and you want it closed, you can keep them in here. So, for instance, if I'm using a damsel or a liquid or a lean medium, I could use in here. These here are just cleaning. I've got about 4 of them, and then I keep cleaning them all so I can dip them into cleaner mixture. What I keep in here is this gamsol here. This is a terpenoid type thing. It's a mineral, pure mineral spirits. So it doesn't evaporate as much as other terp products. So it's actually a beautiful, safe studio product because you're not breathing in the fumes because it's got that low evaporation level. Obviously, it's still a terp, so you still need to be mindful of that. But I've been watching some videos on what people say about terps and the toxicity, and they really make it so complicated because, be careful of putting something in terps. It becomes flammable and you're going to burn your studio down. I've never come across that happening anywhere, and I've never ever thought of it. I've been painting for 25 years. I find it very simple, very easy. When I was teaching in my studio, which I've done for the last 20 years, I actually just get people to use baby oil in the studio to clean their brushes. Any kind of oil will do because it just separates the pigment. And what you do is you can use one of these for your baby oil, and you can fill it with baby oil, and then you take a brush when it's full of paint, you clean it in there, and then you'll wipe it off. Okay, so that's that. If you don't want to smell any kind of terps in your studio, that's an easy way. You just don't want to have baby oil on your painting, so you just make sure you wipe it off your brush. And you can actually wipe your brush off with paint and pick up new paint as well. So the more you paint, the less you use medium, the less you worry about medium. This gamsol is lovely for cleaning brushes, but you don't have to clean your brushes all the time. You can, as I say, wipe off, or you can use the baby oil, as I've just said. So to me, the whole toxicity thing, as long as you're not eating your paints are actually pigment and oil. They're pigment and linseed oil, which is made from seeds, which is made from a plant. The pigment itself is not going to actually find its way into your body, as I say, unless you eat it. You've got some colors that have got cadmium in them or cobalt, and those are toxic pigments, but they're not able to absorb into your skin the way that they're made because they've got sort of 1 milligram per 2,000 parts or something. I don't know the technology behind it, but all I know is that if this was powder, you might be able to ingest it, but it's not powder, it's actual paint. So if you keep your hands clean and you don't eat while your hands are full of paint, then your sort of chance of getting toxicity from these paints are minimal. The only problem is in the solvents you use, and I use low evaporating solvent, and again in my classes everyone just uses the baby oil. I don't like any of the smelly mediums. I don't have them in here. Most mediums you will cover up when you're using them because they are quite smelly, and I just don't. I prefer to use just the Gamsol at this stage anyway, and that's for the bottom layer of your paintings. And then as you go into more layers of painting, you use less and less medium anyway, using thicker and thicker paint. Gamsol has a range of paints that are actually designed with low toxicity. So they don't even use the cadmium colors in their range. And their paints are so sort of soft and buttery, they don't need mediums. So there are paints that are designed that you don't have to worry about them. The other thing you can do is, if you are really concerned, wear gloves when you paint, and also just make sure you've got, if you are using heavy Turps or pure gum Turps, just make sure you've got windows open, you're in a well-ventilated area. And a lot of artists who paint professionally will actually have extractor fans in their studios. Because you don't want to be bothered by toxins. I'm very sensitive to smell, and I'm quite a health conscious person, and to be honest, it's never ever worried me. So I just think too much hype about it all. Modern materials are made differently. In the old days you had lead paints, you had all sorts of things to be concerned about. These days you just can get on with it, enjoy it, and stop worrying about it, because it's not a big deal at all. Having said that, I'm no expert. I just know what I've done and what I've experienced, So I'm going to show you today good habits to get into on your palette. So here, I mentioned my wet wipes early on. These are really, really handy to have. But here I'm going to start putting my paints out. So when you put your paints out, try and put them in the same order every time, because your dark paints sometimes look the same when you haven't mixed white into them. So I'm going to put down my lemon yellow, my cad yellow. Next I'll move on to my yellow ochre. I put nice big dollops of paint on, and a lot of artists, professional artists, would put double or triple that amount of paint on, but since I'm just showing you here, I'm not going to be doing that. So there's your cad red, there's your crimson, to burnt sienna, okay, then we'll move on to our blues. So we'll have I've got cerulean here, not phthalo. I've got ultramarine blue. I've got my Viridian green. I've got my violet. And my indigo. Where is my burnt umber? Okay, so I might put burnt umber down here. Now it doesn't matter, as I say, where your paints go. There's no correct place to put them. But if you put them in the same place, these colours, you'll know exactly what they are. They all look very similar at this point. Now, as far as your whites go, this is how I set my whites out. I put it in a big long tube like that, so that when I take paint to mix with my palette knife, I can just take off the end here and not dirty the whole amount of white. Because if you've got a big blob of white and you're taking bits off with a brush that's already dirty, that white is not going to remain clean. And I really love my clean colours. So keeping my paints clean is a big priority for me. Everybody, these are the brushes I use, and you can see there's quite a few of them. So just pause the video and have a look. You'll see that most of them are Rosemary Co brushes that I get from England. They're awesome. They're not expensive. Most of the professional artists I know love them and use them. So yeah, and there are also other cheaper options you can get locally. But peruse them and I will show you how I use them. So this is a Ric Brush. It's a cheap one. I would prefer to have a really good one because they can make the most incredible marks. You can see here, you can create sort of branch ends, and you've got to sort of practice using this brush because it depends on how you actually use it as to the mark you're going to get. So sometimes if you just drag the paint along or you're very gentle with your brush stroke, you can get very fine lines, but if you push it down, it's going to become thicker. So really a rigger is something you spend a little bit of time practicing so that you can get that very fine line. And here I'll do my signature with it. And I love the fact that the ferrules are longer. You can see how long the ferrules are. That's the hair part of them. And then you can see that you can really get that very sort of painterly feel. You don't have as much control with a rigger because of those long ferrules. And here you see I'm just really going very interestingly by pushing that brush down and seeing how much thicker the lines get. If you want to create thin lines like grass or reeds, then you're sort of practicing how you can push that brush up and create the thin line on the end. Dragging it along also creates a very thin line. And then if you're doing something like hair on an animal, you can learn how to create that mark and with what strength to push it down with. Here you can see I've got a little bit of a munted brush that I've kept, and you can see the different marks you can make by pushing it down. And when you're wanting to do a tree but you don't want to create that idea of every leaf, but you want the mind to fill in the blanks, then you can make those marks to do that with a brush. This brush there is no control with it, so you can see here I'm trying to create a trunk, but it's hard because the brush is a bit munted, as I say. But again, you want to create that look of foliage, then you can play around with old brushes that have become a little bit tattered, and you can find what marks you can make that create that impression. Sometimes the brush just wears down, and that's the mark you get. Grass, bushes, anything, and the edge is what creates that sort of sense of movement through a painting. So that little tree that I've just created there could be a distant tree, and those edges are exciting and interesting. This brush is a Roseman Co Brush. I think it's a number 10, and you can see you can actually load it with paint and then fill in an area with it. It's also what's called a flat, so you can create architectural kind of marks that are consistent and straight. So sometimes, you want to create that very sort of professional architectural line. Well, this is a brush that can do quite a few things. It can fill in a space, but it can create the right line you want because that brush is so beautifully made. It's a synthetic brush, but it's very hardy. This particular brush is a very cheap, it's actually a Langnickel brush, but it's very cheap. And again, I'm showing you how to create that architectural edge by using the side of a brush. I had a commission once to paint a cargo ship by the proud owner of the cargo ship, and I really learned about using the straight edges of brushes to create this ship that wasn't realistic, but the edges made it look quite contextual and quite real. So that was a big learning curve. These brushes here are your Series 279. They're from the Master Series in Rosemary Co. I don't know what their bristle is, whether it's like a mongoose or sable hair, but they're soft, and so you can actually create beautiful edges with them, and also move edges with them. So you can see here I'm blending a little bit, but you can see here I'm pulling that paint across to soften that edge, and then I come along and I'm actually softening and blending. So they're a really good brush for once you've put down all your paint, coming in and just making the edges work for you. These brushes can be very useful for really making your painting look quite painterly. And you can see here they can actually fill in as well. So they're not just for edges. You can do a lot with them. These brushes are very interesting brushes. They are very, very cheap. I think the brushes cost $1 each. They're Hog Hair Brushes. And they're quite surprising in their ability to hold a lot of paint. So in actually, creating large areas in a painting, a landscape, they're fantastic. And one of my heroes in terms of landscape painting in Australia uses these pretty much predominantly to paint with. And they are amazing because when he wants to look for flat areas like atmospheric mountains in the back or hills or even sky, he'll use these brushes to deliver his paint to the canvas, and with very satisfactory results. So he swears by them, he orders them in, and he predominantly uses them. Now, this brush is a short flat, and a short flat is often called a bright, and it's a softer bristle, but also has that wonderful sort of flat edge that you can use and create a really beautiful strong mark with. It also holds a good amount of paint, so they're useful for all sorts of things. You can fill in, you can create edges, you can add paint to. You can even use them for very loose style. A lot of landscape artists or a lot of people in very loose contemporary graphic styles use those short flat brushes because they're quite springy and they can hold a lot of paint. But these guys, this is a Neif brush, the white brush, and the green handled brush is a Neif brush. It's a fairly user-friendly, easy paintbrush to use and can do a lot of things. Again, getting your lovely strong edges, filling in with paint, doing a lot of quick painting. So when you're doing when I'm doing still lives, I love to move very quickly when I'm doing plein air still lives or alla prima still lives, and just to lay your foundational paint down. This is a little excerpt from a little video I've done on plein air painting. And here I'm just showing you how you can use a short flat brush which is loaded with paint, and I'm painting the top layer of sand, the lighter bits. So I've got the dark under layer that you can see, and then over the top I'm loading the paintbrush with paint and dabbing paint marks down with that loaded paint to create the idea of the lighter areas of sand. Then I can come over with a 279 master's brush and I can blend that in a little bit, leaving some of those edges and blending some of them. So the 279 brush is the Rosemary Co Brush, and it's part of their master's range. So this is a very cheap brush I picked up in the art shop. I think it was about $4 or $5. It's very soft, and you can see how you can use it to blend with. Now, I'm just very softly and gently stroking over this paint, and you can see how I can soften all those edges and create a muted down background with it. Here you could see it in action on a painting I've done from one of the videos on plein air painting. You can see me actually softening back some of those edges from the surf in the distance there, from the shadows, and it can be very useful for that effect. This is also one of my cheap brushes that I use for putting on gesso. It's big enough and I can just put my layers of gesso on with it. Buy it from any art store. In this little video clip, I'm painting Maggie, and for the very fine areas like the eyes, I'm using a Kolinsky Sable number 2 or number 4. And you can get whatever size small synthetic watercolor brushes to do the same job. That brings my brushes to an end, but I've kept my favorite till last, and if you don't get any other brushes, these brushes will do everything you need them to do. I want to put a piece of canvas on a board, any board. This board happens to be a drawing board, but any craft board or anything you want to take with you somewhere or to a studio, there is a way of doing this. So actually this is a bit of an issue because of this thing here. All right, so I'm going to just tape this centrally. Okay, so I'll do that. And I'll do it down on here. I won't have a hole here. But so now I'm pulling it taut, and I'm doing it here too. Okay. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Just take a little bit onto the canvas, pull it taut, and push that piece of tape down as far as hard as I can. So I'm going to do it from this side too. So I'm pulling it from this side, and you can see I'm pushing it that way. So see how nice and flat that canvas is. Now I'll come to the corners. I'll do the same thing. So I'll pull it in from this corner. I'm definitely going to have a storm. I'll pull it in from this corner. And I'll pull it in from this corner. This canvas seems to have a little bit of a fold in it that I won't get out. There's just no ways I can get that out. So now I'll pull it into that corner there. Okay, can you see now that is nicely drawn out? Now what I'll do is I'll create my border for my painting scale. I can choose whatever scale I want to use. And what's great about doing it this way is that if your composition goes a little bit awry, you can always move the tape down. And I've done that quite a few times. Just place my main figure a little bit too far left or too far right, and then I was able to grab a couple more centimeters off the side. So I can do that, and then in order to give this strength, I can also tape that down. So it gives that canvas that strength. There's not a lot of strength in just that little bit there. So I'll do this. Oh, it's gotten very dark. It's a storm. Yeah. Wow, the rain is coming down. Okay. So now we've got a lovely flat surface, and obviously I can decide how big or how small my painting surface needs to be. Okay, so that's a good thing to know, because often you'll take your canvas down, it'll be all wobbly, and it'll be very difficult to paint on. This I picked up from a video I watched. And I found it really helpful. I'm going to show you how we set this thing up and set it down. So this is how you carry this. Okay, this one's a bit faulty because I think I've had it for too long. My easels don't often last that long because they get a lot of wear and tear. It's supposed to be quite a sturdy, good easel, and it's not cheap. So I'm a bit disappointed it hasn't lasted as long as it could. It's got these little clips here, pushes out the leg, and then you just tighten it there. These guys just clip out the side there. So there's a clip that just clips in, clips out the side there, and it's got a groove here it fits into, and then you just tighten in that. Just got to fit. Can you see that groove there, Maggie?
Yep.
So it's fitting into the groove there. Same as here on this side, just pop it out. I know there are special ways of doing this, but anything that works really. So that fits into the groove. And then it's got another little clip on this side that you undo and push, if it works, and the leg's supposed to come out. Oh dear, it looks a bit stuck. Let's try this one. Okay, it's supposed to do that straight away. Probably a good idea to test your equipment before you go out, because then you'll see when something's gone wrong, like this one. Sand stuck in it, that's why it was a bit stiff. Last time I went painting with this, I was climbing over sand dunes, and I think the easel got a lot of sand in it. Okay, that's probably why my easels don't last that long. Okay, probably isn't the most elegant way of showing you how to do this. Look, there's the sand dripping out. So now you have your easel set out. So you've got that. You can pull this little tray out this side. Alright. You can choose whatever angle or height you want this to sit at. You can place your medium or whatever you're looking for, your rags or anything at the back here, your wet wipes, so that you know where to find them. Your palette goes here. Now, what I would do is I'd put all my paints out onto my palette and then have my palette sort of sitting like this. Reassuring who does classes as well, she tapes her palette over just so that she paints in storms and all sorts of things. She might tie it down with a packet of sand, keep it nice and strong. You can place an umbrella on here, and I'm just trying to think where my umbrella is. I find an umbrella a bit tricky because it starts to blow everything away, but you can do it, and I have painted with umbrellas before, and they've got attachments that you can attach and place your umbrella at certain angles. Hi everybody, today I want to show you how to prime MDF and sort of talk about, you know, how to keep your canvases looking good and how to have the right primer on them. Just the basics to start off with. That's Teddy and that's Wilson. Wilson, say hello. Okay, so come over here, Maggie, this way. Come behind me here. Okay, so we've got a tiny little MDF board that you get from Bunnings here. I'm not sure what it's called overseas. We actually call it craft board, but people also call it MDF. This is 5 mils thick, and you can get a 3 mil thick one. And normally with your smaller canvases this size, or your smaller boards, sorry, you would go for the 3 mil. On your larger boards, you would go for the 5 mil because you don't want them to warp. But one way to stop them from warping is to prime both sides of the actual board. So here I've got 2 different gessos, a white one and a black one. So sometimes it's really nice to prime it black and it can go straight black. But you know, for most people, you'll be doing a white canvas. So there are different ways of doing it. You can cut these into big boards and roll your paint on with a roller, just like you paint a wall, and you do about 3 different coats. Or you can just paint it as you would anything, and then you can see how I can also create texture with my brush strokes. There is another way to create texture, and this is called whiting powder. You can add that into your gesso and create a much thicker texture. And then what you could do is get a little scrubbing brush. I don't have one here, or a brush with a lot of hard bristles, and you can move your brush around to create a texture. Now, don't know if I've got a canvas. I'll have a look at it. Where's the lid for this? Okay. All right. So I've put my first layer of gesso on this little board, and in actual fact, your first layer can just be flat paint, or as I say, can be rolled on. And now I've added a bit of the whiting powder to the gesso, and you can see that this is a little bit thicker and more textured. Okay, so I'm really creating that little bit of textured paint here. So I'll add this on.
So how do you decide what to do in terms of that textured layer?
You just have to experiment.
Okay.
You know, the thicker you want it, the more whiting powder you'll put in. I don't have a particular formula, but I'll just play with the texture to see what I can get. So,
when would you use that though?
I've got a ballerina painting downstairs that I wish I could show you, but I can't. And that is a very delicate painting with some beautiful texture in it that I have created the tulle of the skirt from. I might be able to find a photo of that to illustrate. But I've done this particular, can you actually see that texture?
Yes.
I've done this particular texture, and once that's dry, I'll show you what happens to paint when you paint over the top of it. It's an acrylic gesso. All the gessos are acrylic, and you get different kinds. The Art Spectrum has a gesso that I use, but you have to get an artist quality gesso. A student quality gesso will make your surface very chalky, and it sucks in the paint, and it's not very fun. So make sure when you use gesso, use a artist quality gesso. Now, what you can do is you can actually use a semi-gloss house paint to prime your boards, okay? So you would do 2 or 3 coats of that, and then you could put your textured gesso on the top. Or you can just paint on the house paint. So you can do that. Gesso can be quite pricey. But gesso is great because you can paint on anything. So you could paint on 600 gram watercolor paper, gesso it, and then you can oil paint on that. Cardboard, anything you paint the gesso, anything you put the gesso on, you can actually oil paint over the top. There are some surfaces that you're going to need a different kind of bonding material, and there's a bonding material called ESP that you can use to put on metal or glass or anything like that if you want to oil paint onto other surfaces. But gesso is the one we use for our boards and mat boards, and it's a really cheap way of getting a really lovely surface.
So what happens if you just paint straight on the board?
Well, first of all, your paint doesn't move very nicely across the board. The board will absorb the paint, and it's not acid-free. So if you put your primer, you're preventing that chemical reaction, and the paint gets to adhere to the primer. It may not adhere to the board as well. So you have to prime it. Okay guys, so just showing you a little bit of the difference in some surfaces we can use. Now this here is foam core. Foam core has a sticky side to it. So what we've done is just placed this canvas on top of that sticky side, stuck it down using the sticky side of the foam core, and then just cut it around the edges. It's really light, so when you're playing a painting or you're going away overseas on a painting trip or anything, this is a very nice light surface. It's not going to make your weight on your bag. That's a really good option. This is just your normal 3mm craft board. And this has got a very slight texture on it. There's no whiting powder in this. It's just gesso. Here we have your normal stretched canvas. You don't want to be traveling with something like this because you've got the weight of the wood. So, but this is nice for studio work. And then here is a little bigger version of craft board. That's your that would be more than 5 mils. That's probably about 7 mils. Anyway, here is some linen. This is your normal 12-inch canvas over here. This would be your linen, and linen has a completely different surface. These are oil-primed linen, and I absolutely love painting on linen because it does something different with the color. The color seems to really pop off linen. So you can actually see these are a few paintings I've done on this linen.
So did you paint it white before you started?
So no, it was primed already. You buy it already primed. And then what's great is that I did these paintings when I went up north. What's great is that you can just take them to a board and then roll them up when you've finished. And often when you're traveling and you want to do larger canvases, this is a great way to go. So, and your quality of your surface also plays a big role into the style you paint and how your painting ends up. So here you can see we've got a canvas that looks unprimed. This is a linen, but it's actually primed with an acrylic gesso. This is the painting that I've done on it. And sometimes having this color behind here is really nice because it's a medium grey. So you're not working on a white canvas because white tends to make your colors look darker. So when you're putting things on a white canvas, your colors appear darker and it's difficult to get your tones right. That's why a lot of the artists will prime their will actually tone their canvas different tones. I know Soroya always used a sort of an orangey tone for his boards. I know a lot of artists will work on a coloured surface rather than on a white canvas. So that's gesso. You can actually buy the transparent gesso and prime your own unprimed canvases as well. You can also get these canvas boards, canvas panels that you buy from art shops, and these are fine to practice on. My favourite one is the Friedrichs. The Friedrichs is primed beautifully and has a beautiful surface. There's nothing worse than buying a canvas and your paintbrush and your paint just do not move across it. And a lot of the cheaper surfaces will do that, and then you just go, what is going wrong? And that's why buying cheap materials can actually be so counterproductive in your journey. It may save you a few cents in the beginning, but it just causes so much frustration that you might want to give up. So I would definitely spend money on getting the right brushes, on buying the right artist materials like artist oil colors rather than student brands. Obviously, if you're doing big abstract works and you're throwing paint around, then you can experiment with whatever you want. But when you're looking to do traditional painting methods, you really do need to, even if you just buy the 6 primary colours and white, you can mix any colour from those. Those are your Series 4 paints. They're expensive, they last a long time, and they're really worth it. Mediums help you create more detail, thin the paint down so the paint flows nicely. There are paints that are formulated where you don't need mediums at all. Gamlin does a range of paints that are quite fluid paints, and they've still got beautiful body, but you don't really need to add a medium to them. Obviously, if you want detail, like you're making a signature or you're doing very fine branches of a tree, you might want to thin the paint down to get that detail. There are a couple mediums I've got here. This is a language solvent. Now, the solvent is a very highly refined turpentine product. So This product they say you can even travel with. It's that low in toxicity and doesn't have that flammable rate that they're worried about in aeroplanes. So this product, it says, cannot be classified as dangerous goods. This apparently, according to language, is one of the top products on the market for studio safety. And, its flash point is 75 degrees Celsius. So it's a safer studio, product. And I think the evaporation is lower than normal, because what happens with Turps is that they evaporate into the air, and even if it's odorless, you're still breathing in that Turps. So for some people who are sensitive, that's not great, even the odorless ones. Gamsol produce a medium that you can use for cleaning up your products, even as a medium in your paints as well, so to thin your paints. In your first layer of painting, you can wash your paint onto your canvas with this and get you a nice washy layer. And then you can come over with your thicker paint. That's as complicated as it really does get. I've got here what's called a liquol. Winsor & Newton do something called liquin, and these are alkyd drying mediums. These you can use if you want your paint to dry a little bit quicker. You're working outdoors. I don't have any with me. The problem with these mediums is that they do put a bit of a gloss on your painting. So for instance, if you're doing portraiture and you're painting over and over and over something, because often with portraiture you'll be recorrecting and recorrecting if you're working from a photograph. So perhaps if you're painting somebody's eyes or their nose or their mouth, the mouth is the most difficult part to get right, and you repaint, the rest of your painting is matte, but the mouth is just totally shiny, and it's very difficult to even that shine out in the end. So I actually don't really like to use these mediums with oil when I'm doing paintings like that. I don't actually like to use oily mediums really at all. I don't varnish my paintings. Now, when you're first starting out, as I said to you, the less complicated you get, the better. I only really end up at this stage using one medium, and that's the Gamsol. When I'm plein air painting, I'll use a pure gum Turps. I don't actually have any gum Turps here at the moment, but I'll use a pure gum Turps, which evaporates really quickly. And because you're outdoors, it doesn't matter, the smell doesn't bother you, you're painting, your first layer is dry quite quickly because the paint layer has all the Turps has evaporated out of it, enough for you to put on another layer of paint within that time. So that is a really exciting thing, to go outdoors and paint with gum Turps. Don't want to do it in the studio because it's really stinky, and I don't like to use any toxins or stinky mediums myself. That's why I've actually fallen in love with the Gamsol. It's really pricey, but as far as I'm concerned, it's worth it. I have here a lean medium number 1. This is an art spectrum lean medium, and I used to use this all the time because it's got a little bit of oil in it, so you can use it right through the painting process. Right, so let's talk about this fat over lean business, which comes up every time you read anything about oil painting. And there's a science behind it. When you do your first layers of painting, called your underpainting, or you're mapping out, or you're getting rid of all the white on your canvas. This could be an underpainting, could be your first layer of drawing, and it's done on a transparent gessoed canvas. And then I've just put my drawing in, and then if I'm going to come over that and finish this painting, I would just add normal paint to it, maybe with a tiny bit of medium if I needed to make the paint more fluid. And then if I was going to create thicker paint, I'd add paint without any medium. Then if I was going to glaze over any of it, I might add a bit of the oily medium to it, the liquin or the liquol, or your made-up recipe that you have. So that's the process here. This painting here, you can see that my last layers have got thicker paint and texture in them. So, and even sort of if you look at that orange, you can see I've added thicker paint. Now that doesn't have any medium in it. That's just paint out the tube. If I put thin darks over this will take longer to dry because it's thicker. The thin darks will dry very quickly, and therefore the paint, because this is still moving that paint, when it dries, it's still contracting a little bit, the paint layer over the top will crack. That's why you add a bit of oil to it so that the paint holds together and is as flexible as the thicker paint underneath. If you find yourself using a medium and you find yourself got a few shiny bits in your painting, you can take something like Artist Retouch Varnish and you can actually cover your whole painting with a retouch varnish. You can spray this on or you can paint it on like a normal varnish with a thick brush. You need to make sure your painting is at least touch dry before you do this. I've once put retouch varnish on a painting and the whole painting just dripped off to the bottom of the canvas. So you have to be a little bit careful that you don't make your painting isn't too wet. But the great thing about retouch varnish, you don't have to wait 6 months or a year. Now, then you might come over retouch varnish with a proper Daymar varnish in 6 months' time, if that's what you want to do. I don't varnish anything I paint. The paints are made today that are actually hardy enough, stable enough that you don't really need to varnish anything. And for instance, the painting behind me, I did 18 years ago. And this painting here has never been varnished. And I actually love the matte look. I don't like a shiny look to things. I love the matte look. And if it gets dirty, I can just take a warm cloth with a little bit of soap and water and just wipe it off. So I did a bit of research on varnishing years ago and discovered that it's great if you want to really have your paintings glossy and shiny and light going through. That's perfect, and it works beautifully with a lot of paintings. I don't love it, so it's my personal choice not to varnish. Having said that, if you want to, as I said, if you've got an area that's glossy here, you can actually leave that glossy area and varnish all around it. If you varnish over that glossy area, you might find that glossy area just gets extra glossy. So some people will say you can even take your liquid or your medium that you use, whatever medium you've mixed up, and you can actually put it all over your canvas to even up that gloss there. So varnishing becomes a personal thing. I may be wrong here, but I personally don't feel it's necessary. This is me toning a white canvas board with burnt sienna. So I put on the pigment, then I wipe it off, depending on how dark I want it, but just gives a lovely warm undertone. And takes. This is me toning a white canvas board with burnt sienna. So I put on the pigment, then I wipe it off, depending on how dark I want it, but just gives a lovely warm undertone. And takes the white of the canvas away so that there's a sort of a mid-tone warmth. Today I'm going to show you about clean brushes. It seems like a basic thing, but it's quite important, and I'll tell you why. First of all, we all know how very expensive brushes can be, and we want to keep our brushes for as long as possible. Some artists have discovered ways of buying the cheapest brushes that suit their purpose of painting and then just chucking them out because they're too lazy to wash them. And I know a few people who do that sort of thing. But I, on the other hand, really love my brushes. And when you get to really know what brushes do, what you need them for, which ones work the best for certain things, you do want to keep them in the best state you can. So if by some chance you get lazy and you forget to wash them, or you've come back from a plein air painting trip and you're exhausted, you've painted the life out of everything, and you forget your brushes in your bag, and you forget them there for 4 days, 5 days, 6 days, and then you go out to plein air, paint again, and you're sorting out your equipment and you find these very hard brushes, your favorite brushes, and they're all hard in your bag, and you're most devastated. This stuff is your answer, okay? This is called Incredible Brush Cleaner. I don't know, it looks like it's made in the US, so you probably can get it everywhere. Although this is Australia here. Anyway, this you can just soak your brushes in. So even for acrylics, if you've got some brushes that are hard that you think I don't have to throw away, soak them for a couple of days in this and you'll be amazed at what you can revive. If you've been a good girl or boy and actually been cleaning your brushes regularly, you won't see this in your ferrules. Can you see here, my ferrules have actually got paint in them. Okay, this could be that this brush is stained or it's quite an old brush, but you want to avoid paint drying there, because once paint dries there, it changes the shape of your brush. So here I've got phthalo blue on my brush. Now phthalo blue is a very staining color. It'll stain everything, okay, and it's very high tinting. So my first step is to get rid of as much of that color as I can. If there's a lot of thick paint here, I can actually do that and get rid of as much of that pigment as possible. There's no thick paint on this brush because it's just got thin paint, but so I've got an old towel here. I can wipe on and see how it's getting less and less. See how much pigment is on there. I know this is basic, but this is so important to get right. Okay, so that's as much pigment as I can get out of there. My next step is to take this pure soap. Now this here, our brand is called Velvet. There's soap called Pura, but it's just laundry soap. And people swear by goat soap as well. So now can you see how much pigment is still coming out the brush? Even though I've cleaned it in the solvent already. So this is hot water, because the hot water will loosen the oil in the brush. And I mean, I actually do use really hot water. You might read up and people say, well, soap and water not good for your brushes, or you know, the hot water will melt the glue in the brushes. Sorry, but I've used really hot water for many years and my brushes are still amazing. Can you see now how we're getting pigment out, but not a lot? But there's still pigment coming out. So I need to keep going. I'm going to wipe this here. I need to keep going until there's no pigment coming out this brush. And can you see how I've got there? There's still a tiny bit, but you know what I'm pulling out now is old pigment from having not washed that brush properly before. So, as you can see now, this is actually cleaner than when I started. So this brush hadn't been cleaned properly. Bad girl. Okay, so that is beautiful. Still stained by the phthalo blue, but beautifully clean.